Hello scholars and welcome back to Math with Mrs. Halverson. Today we are going to be rounding to the nearest hundred. Now you might be saying, Mrs. Halverson, we did this last time. Well, today we're going to look at trickier numbers that might be a little bit harder to round to the nearest hundred. Okay, so a couple things before we get started. We want to make sure that every time that we round to the nearest hundred that we have 2 zeros at the end. So that's kind of a good hint if our answer is close, correct, or very wrong. Okay, so here we go. What if we had a number like this? What if we have a number that's a 2-digit number and we're trying to round it to the nearest hundred? Well, we know that this number, yes, I'm doing an underline, is in between 0 and 100. If that's 50, 94 would be around there. So you would round 94 to 100. Now, what if we had a number like this? What if we had 46 and it said round this number to the nearest hundred? What would we do? Well, if this is 50, 46 is around there. So we would round it down to 0. If we were doing our poem, we would pretend that there's a 0 in the hundreds place. Okay? So that's either going to go up to 1 or stay at 0. Look behind, underline 5 or more, add 1 more. 4 or less, let it rest. Don't forget to add the zeros. So it would really be 3 zeros if we were rounding to a number that had 3 place values. But since it's just 0, we don't need all 3. It's kind of silly. Okay. Now, what if we had this number? Rounding this number to the nearest hundred. Ooh, 1,042. What if we had that number? Remember what we did when we were rounding to hundreds to make sure that we weren't so confused? We covered the 4th digit. Right? So we know 42 is in between 0 and 100. 50 would be about there. Okay? 42 is a little bit less than 50. Now, this is where it gets tricky. So we really were covering up 2 digits, right? So we would round to 0, but that doesn't make very much sense. We need to make these 3 numbers into 4-digit numbers. So this would be 1,042. That's where it would be on the number line. And this is 1,100. Now what would be the other 100 that this would be in between? What? And 1,100. Good. 1,000. 1,000 and 1,100. Now, since this is closer to 1,000, we would round down to 1,000. Okay, I'm going to give you a tricky one, and then we're going to try something very different. All right, my tricky one for you is going to be 3,074. Go ahead, pause your device, figure it out. What would you round this to? Rounding to the nearest hundred, and then come on back. All right, welcome back, scholars. Here we are. I hope that this was pretty simple for you. It probably was. Okay, so remember, we're going to cover that up since we're rounding to the nearest hundred. And then we can also cover that one up because it's just a 0. So we're looking in between 2 hundreds, 74. It would be in between 0 and 100. 50 is about there, right? I always put that in just because it's a good reference point. So I want you guys to get into the habit of that too. Well, I just always put 50 in. Okay, now we need to turn these into 4-digit numbers. Okay, so we left out the 3,000, so we're going to add that 3,000 back in here. Now, if 3,100 is the higher 100, what would the lower 100 be? That's right, 3,000. Good. Now 3,050 is here. 3,074. Let's do what we did yesterday. So if this is 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So we would be 50, 60, 70, 4. So 3,074 would be right there. Now tell me, scholars, is it closer to 3,100 or 3,000? That's right. It's closer to 3,100. Good. Okay. Let's go on to the next tricky part. Okay, let's say we have that same number, 3,074. Now, we said that rounded to the nearest 100, this number is 3,100. Now, let's go back a few days ago. 100 means 100, 10 means 10. Let's go back a few days ago in math when we were rounding to the nearest 10. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. So we already rounded to the nearest 100. What if we were to round this same number to the nearest 10? Okay, so remember, every time you round to the nearest 100, you have 2 zeros. Just as a reminder, so you can kind of check your work, whenever we round to the nearest 10, usually there's only 1 0. Sometimes there's 2, but for now we'll just stick with 1, okay? So here we go. This time we're going to cover up both of these, okay? And we see that our 2-digit number is 74. So 74 is in between what two tens? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Good. It's in between 70 and 80. Here's 75, just because I always like to have that halfway. Okay, so if this is 75, 74 is right there. Now, we're not talking about 74. We're talking about 3,074. So I'm going to go ahead and add those digits back in. Now, tell me, scholars, is 3,074 closer to 3,070 or 3,080? Good. 3,070. Okay, remember, if we're rounding to the nearest 10, we're looking at the tens place. We're going to look behind, underline. 5 or more, you add 1 more. 4 or less, you let it rest. So the 7 stays the same. But you need to remember to add that 0. Okay. Let's try our next number. 151. Let's try that. What is this? Rounded to the nearest 100, and then rounded to the nearest 10. So 151. What 200s is that in between? 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. Oh, we went way too far, right? It's just in between 100 and 200. Now what am I going to put here? 150. I love halfway marks. They're really great. Okay, so 151 on our number line would be just right here, right? So is it closer to 200 or 100? Good. It's closer to 200, just barely. So when we are rounding to the nearest 100, we would be to 200. If we were doing our home, we would be looking at this number, see if this number changed. We look behind, underline. 5 or more, you add one more. Don't forget to add the zeros. Okay, what if we were rounding this to the nearest 10? So since we're talking about tens, we want to get rid of the third digit, right? So we're looking at 51. What two tens is 51 in between? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Oh, 50 and 60. 155. Okay, so we need to turn these back into 3-digit numbers, right? So let's add that one back in. Okay, so 151 would be right about there. Okay, so would we round to 150 or 160? Good, we would round to 160. Okay, scholars, this one I'm going to have you do on your own, and then we'll do one more on our own, and we'll call it a math day. What if we had 2,491? 2,491. First, round this to the nearest 100. That means you're going to have 2 zeros at the end. Okay? And then when you round it to the nearest 10, you're going to have just 1 0. Okay? Go ahead. Pause your device. Solve it. Okay, welcome back, scholars. Let's round this number, 2,491, to the nearest 100. So, since we're talking about hundreds, I'm going to cover up that fourth digit. What two hundreds is 491 in between? 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. Very good. 400 and 500. 450 is in the middle. Oh, but we need to add these digits back in so we can remember that we're working with a 4-digit number. Excuse me. 2,491. If this is 2,005, this is 2,500. And this is 550, 2,000, 550, 560, 70, 80, 90, 2,500. So 22,491 would be about right here. So are we closer to 2,500 or 2,400? Good. 2,500. Okay. All right. Now, if we're rounding, oh, go ahead and pause your device one more time and round this number to the nearest 10. Go ahead. Welcome back, friends. Since we're only working on the nearest 10, let's cover this up, these two digits up. We're looking at 91, okay? 91 is in between 90 and 100. Those are the nearest tens that it has. It's between 90 and 100, okay? So here's 95. Let's turn these back into 4-digit numbers. Uh-oh. We're gonna have to change this one to, okay, so before it was 100, right? But if you look, 2,490, what is 10 more than 2,490? We would have 2,500. So scholars, this might be one of the times where you have 2 zeros when you round to the nearest 10. Okay, but let's investigate a little more. So 2,490, 2,500, which would be closer to? 2,491 would be like right there. So are we closer to 2,490 or 2,500? Good, we're closer to 2,490. Okay. Now, I have one more challenge. It's gonna be just like that last one, because that last one was actually pretty tricky. If you did great on that last one, awesome. Here's your next one that'll challenge your brain. $5,395. I want you to round this to the nearest hundred. I like how we had it before. Round it to the nearest 100 and the nearest 10. Okay. Go ahead and start, scholars. Pause your device and then we'll go over the answer after this. Find both answers and then come back to me. Okay, welcome back, friends. So here we have 5,395. First, we're going to round to the nearest 100, which means we're going to have probably 2 zeros. Okay, and then we're going to round to the nearest 10, which might have 2 zeros. So this one I'm really trying to trick you. So let's see how we do. Okay, so if we're rounding to the nearest 100, I'm covering up that 5 because I don't want to deal with it yet. 395 is between 300 and 400. Now, just off the top of our heads, because we are so smart, is 395 closer to 400 or 300? Yeah, it's almost to 400, so we're just gonna put 395 here. Oh no, we need to add back in that fourth digit. So tell me, scholars, is 5,395, does that round up or down? Very good, it rounds up. It's almost to 5,400. So that's what we're gonna round to. Now this is where I anticipate some confusion. Okay, so now we're rounding to the nearest 10. So we cover these 2 digits, 95. 95 is in between what 2 tens? 90 and 100, right? 95 would be right there in the middle. Okay, now let's make these 4-digit numbers. This is where it gets tricky. So we would just add the 5 and the 3 back in here. But 90, 100, this would have to be what? What's 10 more than this? Let's add. 0 plus 0 is 0. 9 plus 1 is 10. 1 plus 3 is 4. Drop the 5. Oh, okay. So it would be 5,400 over here. Okay. But Mrs. Halverson, 5,395 is right in the middle. Do you remember what we said? If we had a 5, what happens? So we're looking at this number, underline. 5 or more, you add 1 more. We always round up. We always round up when it's in the middle. So this rounded to the nearest 10 would also be 5,400. All right, scholars. Again, rounding can be really, really tricky. If you have any questions, please, please, please meet with your math teacher at their office hours. My office hours are from 9 to 10 in the morning and 1:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon. I hope to see some of you there if you are struggling. All right, have a great math day and I will talk to you next time.